Just wanted to be clear before I start this theory. I'm not a Buddhist, but I am from India, so I know about Buddhism very well. Only barely scratching the surface for the sake of character analysis and theory. So please correct me if I'm wrong or dumb. With that being said, so Boruto seems to have an emphasis on numbers. In fact, Naruto as a whole seems to have an emphasis on numbers. But specifically in Boruto is where I noticed a pattern. First, the Kara members with the numbers on their faces. Ever since I saw them, I have been theorizing what they mean, because it can tell an entire story in itself. Who joined first, who was modified first, but recently I learned there's symbolism underneath some of them, which I find very fascinating. An example being codes number 6 is a reference to a computer error. Error code 6, which is a severed connection between certain servers or a credit card declining transaction. Sounds a lot like Ishiki's connection to him being severed, rejecting the black karmic, transmitting his soul into code. Then Ishiki's 8 tomo on his robes or jacket, and then the 8 triangles on his Dharma wheel. It didn't necessarily hit me until Kashin Koji's prescience reveal, which can be translated to 10 directions, or, if you change the words up a bit, 10 paths. And that straight up reminded me of the 6 paths. The whole thing with the Otsutsuki in Naruto's universe, which links to Boruto's universe, is the heavy influence on Hinduism and Buddhism. Actually, in Hinduism, there is so many content inspiration great characters, but India bad condition and different religion invasion, such as Islam, Christianity, even Buddhism destroyed their culture. Oh, I said too much. So topic is the cycle of reincarnation being a huge factor. This leads me to the reason why I made this post in the first place. I discovered a concept called the 12 links of dependent origination. From my understanding, dependent origination is the Buddhist belief that all things are dependent on other things. This directly applies to the 12 links in a cause and effect kind of situation. But it's a bit more complicated than that. Anyways, each link directly influences the other, which leads to that cycle of reincarnation, and the idea is to break free from the cycle to reach nirvana. So you could say each character in the story could be stuck in a specific part of this cycle, or stuck on one of these 12 links. Or their personality is loosely based on these links, hinting at where they are leading in the future, and possibly even their power level. It seems the stronger the character, the closer they believe they are to nirvana. Which, yes, I know sounds crazy, but Shirbai did something similar to that, so hear me out. Finally, we're at the part where I make comparisons. The not-so-obvious ones are Delta and Kashin Koji. The first link is ignorance. From my understanding, it's the lack of knowledge of your own existence, or why you exist. In the philosophy, it seems to describe that there are various causes and conditions that results in our existence, but lacking that understanding is considered ignorant. I feel this applies to Delta because of how Amato created her in hopes of creating Akabe. Delta probably has no idea why she was created, and how many times she was recreated in order to fulfill Amato's wishes. The second link is mental formations, which is described as karmic impulses that arise from previous lives. These impulses can become your predispositions, which can affect the choices you make in your future. I believe this is Kashin Koji. He was specifically told by Ishiki that he had a predestined fate to end up like Jiraiya. And Kashin Koji does seem to move and act on a similar wavelength that Jiraiya did. This link also connects genetics, heritage, and culture to one's predispositions, which checks all the boxes for Kashin Koji, since he's become a ninja and has a natural affinity to senjutsu just like Jiraiya, who I wouldn't say is his past life, but is closely tied to him. Both of the links I mentioned above are connected to the past life, before reincarnation. So it makes perfect sense that Kashin Koji and Delta, who are clones of the deceased, are connected to these links. The most obvious ones are Kawaki and Ishiki. Ishiki's association with the number 8 makes sense because the 8th link is associated with craving, the desire for pleasant feelings and the desire to avoid unpleasant feelings. The way he wanted power, the way he used Kawaki's feelings to also convince him power was everything. The way he used wishes against Kara members in order to dangle their desires in their faces. I feel like it makes sense. Oh, and how he tends to avoid fights when not necessary on multiple occasions. Feel free to disagree. Kawaki has a 9 on his face, which may be a double meaning actually. First off, the ninth link, which is directly connected to the eighth, clinging as in an attachment, or even an obsession associated with the things you crave. Naruto is Kawaki's desire to be loved and accepted, and he is now obsessed with him, which is bringing him down the path he is now. You could also say that Kawaki is now obsessing over power too, which has become a new philosophy of his to a degree, but Naruto is the true attachment here. The other meaning of the 9 on his face is, well, Naruto, the 9 tails. Also keep in mind Kawaki's older design. He had a 1 on his face, but it was changed to a 9. Again, feel free to disagree. The 10th link is becoming, and since it directly links to the last one, I'm assuming it's letting what you crave consume you. I'd say this is the 10 tails, literally becoming what they were craving, and then clinged on to, which resulted in Clogrime. This plays into the 11th link as well, which is birth. They gave birth to brand new beings. Note, Kawaki actually might be leading onto the 10th link becoming as well due to the recent developments. His obsessive nature might be a clue as to what power-up he ends up with in the future. The last link is the 12th link, which is aging and death, which I will directly tie to Boruto and Shirbai. For some reason in the final chapters in the manga, Boruto's age was brought up, both times by Eida to be exact. One of those times being in the final chapter of Part 1, which I find very intentional. The 12th link is exactly as it seems. We will eventually age and then die, restarting the cycle back to the first link being ignorance. Coincidentally, the number 12 was mentioned again when Amato was talking about Akaba's death, which is when Delta was first being created and Kara was being formed. It seems like everything is sort of coming together. If the Kara members to a degree are representing the 12 links and the cycle of reincarnation, Akaba's death and Boruto's birth being the beginning. This might be a huge hint towards Shirbai actually being reincarnated through Boruto. I believe this is the best evidence I could come up with to prove that Shirbai has been reincarnated. You could say all Otsutsuki are stuck on the 12th link though, a constant state of trying to avoid death and aging. In conclusion, I feel like I caught on to something, but let me know if I'm talking nonsense, if I'm stretching, or if I just missed the mark. Thank you, and do subscribe.